Hello and welcome back to Chatbot on Robot Republic with me, Josh or Riku. Today I'm joined by another very special guest because I have Romain, who is better known as the French dev, who is developing an amazing 2.5D stealth action adventure game called Aveliana. Hello, Romain.
Hello, you do.
How are you doing? Are you doing okay?
Very good, thanks.
Excellent. So we're here to talk about Avaliana, which is a game that you're currently developing. There is a demo available on Steam right now, and there's a link to the Steam page in the description. So obviously, once you've watched the interview, go and check that out. And it looks absolutely stunning. I got a little bit of time to kind of sit down and play with some of it. It feels really, really good. It's such a really wonderful game. Where did the inspiration for Avaliana come from? I think is my first question.
So thanks a lot for the question. I think the first thing is I was inspired a lot by the old kind of games like Zelda, the old Zelda by Commandos. I don't know if you know the series.
Yeah,
it's a series of like a tactical stealth action game, and also Rayman or this kind of very nice games in 2D. And so that gave me like some basic ideas of like what I could try to do or what kind of design could work. And also I was inspired a lot by Children of Malta. I don't know if you played it.
I have not, no, but I will go after this.
It's a very nice indie game. It's in pixel art, so it's not the same style.
Yeah.
But they made an amazing job at drawing all this stuff, and the gameplay is really cool as well. So that was my main inspirations on starting the project.
That's really, really cool. And like you say, kind of, the short chunk of the game that I got around to playing before the interview and stuff, it felt very much, and we talked about this in the pre-interview chit chat. It felt very much like the old school Zelda games. And then some of the combat stuff it reminded me a little bit of, actually, in terms of its fluidity, of Hades as well. In terms of like some of the combat, the animations and the particle effects and all the kind of stuff. It kind of had that really fluid feel that obviously made Hades one of the biggest games a couple of years back and stuff. So yeah, I got that vibe from it, from the little bit that I was able to get, the little bit that we played before while prepping for the interview. So kind of thinking, so the game then is a 2.5D stealth action adventure game. How did you kind of land on that as a choice of the game? Obviously, we've talked briefly. You've mentioned Commandos as an inspiration, along with Zelda, Children of Malta, all these other kind of like games. Why 2.5 stealth action adventure?
So I really think that Commandos was a big inspiration to me. And I mean, I love the game, but I thought that for an indie game and for something more dynamic, it would be better to play only one character. That was one of my ideas. Try to make this kind of stealth action game, but with one character only. So then it changes as well how you play, because when you have one character, you can give him more abilities because you have more control on it, and it's less tactical compared to Desperados or Commandos games.
Yeah.
And that was also like motivation for the 2.5D. I think as a indie dev and solo dev, without real art skills, I think 2D was the only choice. 3D would have been too complex for me. And 2.5D, I think it's a good option to, like, for this kind of stealth game, you have to be on a 3D-like map or level. You cannot be only on 2D, I think. So it was like an in-between, a good solution in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that kind of comes across the way that you use the 2.5D for the exploration and the stealth bits, which I'm not going to lie, I did suck at. I did end up putting myself in tricky situations on a regular basis because I am terrible at stealth games. I'm the person who would do Assassin's Creed, go in being all stealthy, and within 5 minutes would be hacking my way out of an entire fortress of baddies. But it's really kind of, the 2.5D really lends itself to that. The short bit that I was playing, kind of the movement mechanics feel really fluid. We'll get on to kind of like talking about kind of like movement mechanics and animations in a minute, but it felt really nice.
Yeah, I think it's really very important 2.5D because it's very easy to see as well the player, the character. So you know all the time where you are, basically in the middle of the screen most of the time.
Yeah.
And it makes everything easier for me as well, because you need visual feedbacks when you're playing, and it's easier when it's like this. You don't have to move the camera. There is just, the character is in the middle, and you just have to check where are the enemies. So it's a good point of view, I think. It's a good camera.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really does well. And I'd noticed as well that actually thinking about it, the player character is very visible around the screen.
Yeah, it is bright.
Yeah, and that brings us quite nicely into our next question. Because obviously all of the environments in the game are hand drawn, and they are absolutely beautiful. Just moving around. You're welcome, because they are absolutely. So I cannot say this enough. They are so beautiful and gorgeously stylized to the themes of the game. What was the reason behind that particular artistic decision? Because obviously, when you're doing a 2.5D game, I know that Unity has got some various kind of like stock assets, and you've got stuff on the Unity asset store that you can use and stuff. So why go? Obviously, it's not a why did you do this in the aggressive, but why kind of go through? Because it must have taken forever to do all of these environments and to hand draw them yourself.
It's true, it takes a lot of time. Actually, I'm not really. Initially, I was not a game developer, so I'm like a self-made. I don't really like this term, but I didn't really know about anything about asset stores or about all this stuff. So when I started, I thought, okay, you have to draw your things, because who is gonna draw it for yourself? No. So that's why I just started making my own maps and little assets. And for the style, I chose, like, I started to draw with the tablet, the drawing tablet. And that's basically the kind of style that came out immediately. And so it was some kind of like a kind of minimalistic, like very few colors, large areas, and no shadows, no shades, or very little shades.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it looks kind of flat, but then with Unity and with the lights in Unity, you can put a bit of like ambient lights and kind of volume with this. So that's how I made it. Like, I kept the drawing simple, and then I made the extra stuff, like the post-processing, the other stuff, a bit more fancy. And I think it matches quite well between the lights, the particle effects, the post-processing, and the initial drawings that are quite simple.
Yeah, I mean, I know that kind of, from what we've seen, what we've played is visually, it's really nice to look at. Like some 2.5D games can be a bit kind of jarring at times with some of the lighting decisions that are made, but it really does look absolutely stunning.
Yeah, if I'm honest, I don't really think about it. I'm like, when I'm designing the levels or drawing the stuff, it's just like a bit randomly. I see it could fit good like this. I try it, and if it looks good, I keep it. But I don't really plan, like far ahead. I just plan for little stuff I need to do right now.
Yeah.
And then I do them.
That's excellent. And that's really cool as well, actually. That whole kind of just like, I just try stuff out, and if I like it, it goes in. And if I don't, then it doesn't go in. And that's quite nice. And I think that's one of the biggest upsides to being, kind of, we've done quite a lot of chatbots on the channel now. That is definitely one of the upsides that comes through from being a small team or solo dev, is you can just look at something and say, actually,
no, not for now.
Yeah. And that's really nice.
You don't have to try to make it fit. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, and that's it. You don't have to say your manager, I tried, it didn't work, or something like that. Just,
you don't have to have those lovely discussions with leads and producers by saying it's not gonna work. You just kind of go, it doesn't work, but I might be able to use this at a later point for something else, kind of thing. So we'll just put that over there. Moving on and to think a little bit more about, because there is a really, really interesting story. The small chunk that we played, I got some of the story. It enticed me. I want to play more of it. I can't wait to play more of it. But can you, obviously, without any kind of like big spoilers, major spoilers, minor spoilers, whatever, kind of like without spoiling much, what can you tell us about? Because I love the way it's described on the Steam page. On Steam, you've penned it as it is an astonishing and unexpected story. And just from the small chunk that we played on the run up to this, that very much came across. I was very intrigued. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know without spoiling it. How much can you tell us about this astonishing and unexpected story?
Okay, so the unexpected I cannot say.
Obviously.
Obviously. But so the basic start is quite like a classical. Like Aveliana has lost a child and she's trying to get back to find him. And the thing is, the city where she lives in is actually completely isolated. It's like an island floating in the sky. And the reason for this is that it's actually prohibited to go out of the city. And unfortunately, to get a child, she has to find outside of the city. So that's why she goes out, and she goes against the will of anyone she knows. But then she's trying to go and try to find some artifacts that will give her the power to come back in time and like change the events of time.
Yeah.
If everything goes well, of course. So that's the starting point. And then she will meet a fox. Like it's basically a kind of guide, like it's representing nature. It's like a kind of guide on how to use the artifacts and how to find them, why they are there and why they are lost. So all this kind of stuff. You get a lot of information from him.
I'm gonna say I love the fox.
I love fox as well.
I love fox. I love foxes generally. I
Yeah.
have constant argument. We've got another guy called Josh, not me, the other Josh, on the channel, and he's like, he lives in London. He's like, no, foxes are terrible. I'm like, nah, foxes are adorable. They are some of the best animals on this planet.
They're beautiful.
They are gorgeous creatures. I'm really excited to play more of this game because the fox is just I need more of that fox in my life because he's so adorable the way he runs around and everything else. It's gonna calm myself down. I'm too excited talking about the fox.
It's okay. You can pet the fox.
Obviously then the fox is kind of like, he is central to the narrative. He is there to support Avaliana throughout her journey.
Yeah.
Is how important, obviously we know he's there as a support character to kind of help Avaliana kind of point out various game mechanics, all these other bits and bobs to kind of like support both player and Avaliana throughout the narrative of the game. How, in terms of the overall game and the narrative, are there any other features that the fox will bring into it's kind of like later in the game? Because obviously we played a very small chunk of it from the demo.
Yeah, for the fox is clearly a non-playable character, so it's like more like a kind of side buddy. But he's for the narrative, he's really representing all the wild, the nature, everything that is not the city. So everything Aveliana doesn't know about. And basically, without him, she couldn't even find any artifact or do anything. So he's really central to the story. And for the gameplay itself, it's more like an encounter. You cannot play it, and it will not give you special powers. But you have other stuff in the game. Like there is a medallion. I don't know if you've seen it, but the medallion is what will give you some powers. So basically, to reveal invisible stuff or to have other kind of attacks, like a range attack, will be through the medallion. So that's how you get your powers. And in this, the fox is helping you as well because basically the medallion is developing when you get the artifacts. So then he's helping you to unlock some abilities all around, like along the game.
Oh, that sounds so
cool. It is important. And I'm now doing all the animation stuff for it. So it takes time, but it's fun.
More fox animations. That's what we need. Yeah. That's really awesome.
I have so many drawings, like maybe 400.
I bet there must be. Yeah, I was gonna say you must have at least several gigabytes worth of artwork for animations on your computer for this game.
Yeah, the good thing is that there are small drawings, like not 5 giga for each drawing.
Definitely an upside. So while we're talking about the narrative, then, how did you manage? Because it's a really interesting story. The world that you've built, the kind of the lore and stuff around the world is really interesting. How did you manage the writing and then subsequently the communication of that to the players throughout the game? Apologies as well for the dogs barking.
No worries. Well, for the story, I it's actually something I wrote really in the beginning with the help of my wife. We discussed a lot about like what could be fun twists and what could be interesting in the story, what we could say. And also I wanted like, okay, it's good to say, I want to say a message, like about some things that are important to me. So I wanted to pass them through the game. I think it's a very good media for this. And so that's basically why there is this kind of like antagonism between the nature and the city and how they live in a very small, tight area. Maybe I was influenced by the lockdown, by the way, because I started more or less at the same period of time.
I mean,
though the story was written before the lockdown, but
but we all lived through it. It's something that happened, and it's something that we're all familiar with. And actually, it's an interesting thing to look at from a creative perspective. So yeah,
I was living in Boston, but I was in a small kind of cage. My apartment was kind of a cage, so
yeah,
maybe that's why. So, anyways, I wanted to carry this kind of message. It's like not very like not political message, but some basic stuff about what is important to me. And so I wrote all these kind of like storylines, and that's why the fox is actually in the game, because he was really in the story in the beginning. And then I thought, oh, maybe there are too many games with foxes, but that's okay.
Never enough.
Never enough foxes.
Never enough.
And then to give information to the player, there are different ways. So you've seen there are cutscenes, but basic cutscenes, just like a kind of drawing and then giving some information. That's how the story progresses the most, I think. That's where I give the big lines of the story. That's what everyone will get. And then there are other information from the fox in the game. There is information as well from other kind of creatures that you can find, but they are hidden. Like you don't see them immediately. You have to reveal them in the level. And there are other stuff like you can find also some kind of encrypted, like you have to decipher some text that is written on walls. It's kind of a alphabet I've made is basically English transformed into any random symbols.
Yeah.
But you can decipher them throughout the game because you get information in the beginning, like Aveliana is telling you, I think this sounds like this text. So you can get some information from the size of the words, try to make some alphabet yourself. And so for people that really want to dig very deep, you will get this very extra information. That's for the kind of nerds or more geeky solution. You don't have to get it, but if you have it, you will certainly understand the story earlier or better at some point, I think.
Oh, sounds cool. That sounds brilliant as well. And actually to kind of have that kind of tiered narrative stuff in there where you've got your baseline narrative that everyone will get, and then there's another level for people that want to go deeper, and then there's even more lore for people that want to dig deeper under that is really awesome.
I'm sure a lot of people will just want the first layer.
Yeah.
Others, like maybe I expect maybe 60% of people will want the one that is easy to find, that you don't have to decipher. And maybe 10% will want the extra information, but still it's fun to put it there. And maybe some people will maybe reveal some information, I don't know, on Reddit or something like this.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, to be fair, like,
yeah,
I find the lore-based stuff when you're writing is some of the funnest, because you can sit back and just be like, I've created this amazing universe, this fantastic world, and
I think like I don't know, there are better ways of telling stories, but this way of giving small information every time is actually very easy for us, like as developers, because we don't have to like. If someone doesn't get one information, it's not a big deal because we'll probably get it later. So it's actually much easier than if you have to think the whole story and make sure that the player is going there and is with a lot of attention at this moment to get information. Because in that case, it's more complex.
Absolutely. And that sounds quite nice as well and accessible to players, because that way you're not expecting them to remember huge amounts of stuff. You've got the kind of the manageable, if you will, amount of information that players need to kind of experience the story, and then you've got this kind of additional layers for people that want to spend more time with the game, which not gonna lie,
it's not like a story. It's not like a story game. There's like it's more like about the gameplay, but then have the story.
Yeah.
So
And I have to
We'll
admit,
be
I'm
doing
really
something.
excited to see. I'm excited to spend a bit of time with this game
Thanks a
doing some
lot.
of this deeper lore digging. To be fair, that seems like my kind of thing.
You will be one of the first doing this.
Um, so then thinking kind of like, you've just kind of mentioned there was some kind of like, the narrative is kind of, you've had this idea, it's developed over time, you've added some bits in and stuff. Thinking more broadly about the whole game, kind of from initial idea to the final version, which you're working on at the moment. And I know that we talked earlier before the interview about the fact that you're now in kind of like this post-production phase, which is very faffy. What have kind of been some of the major narrative changes to the story, if there have been any at all? I mean, obviously you mentioned that you've added the fox in as a kind of like mechanic stroke representation of nature and the world. Have there been any other kind of significant changes? Like, did you have an ending and then you thought, actually, no, I'm going to change that, or did you kind of go, right, this mid bit is a bit bland, I'm going to spice it up a bit?
Actually, I started with the ending, so I didn't change the ending. I think it's a good way to write a story. Start with the end, because you always know where you want to go.
Yeah.
And you know if you reveal too much or not enough. So the changes I've made mostly on the pace of telling the things, like trying not to tell too much too early.
Yeah.
And also like not making too stupid twists, like I don't want to make a twist that comes out of nowhere, if possible. I hope everyone will understand the twists before and get surprised, but not upset.
Yeah.
And then the biggest changes I would say I've made is to add this final layer I told you about, the deeper layer. This one was not planned at all in the beginning, but then I thought, maybe it's nice because I can say things that are not really relevant to the story, but gives a lot of on the lore and these kind of things. And I think when you get the lore, you understand better the characters. So maybe when someone will tell you something later, you will get the real information, the real thing he wants to tell you, because sometimes people don't tell exactly the truth, or they don't tell you what you want to hear.
That's really cool actually as well. And actually kind of the point you made about, I didn't want to give players too much information too early on. I want to kind of like fragment it, break it up a bit and stuff. It's a really nice idea because we've all played games where you start a game and within the first 20 minutes you've got to learn the names of 3 million characters and you've got to know the names of 8 different island nations, and you're just sitting there going,
you get lost.
Blonde-haired lady, dark-haired man, spiky-haired dude, girl with glasses, and you don't actually attach to those characters for about the first 10 hours of gameplay because you're like, I don't know what's going on. So I think it's really nice that kind of like that fragmented, just little bits of narrative being kind of like threaded through.
Yeah. Also, I tried not to multiply too many characters. Like in the game, the story, there are not so many different characters because I wanted to keep it easy to understand. And I know when people play games, maybe they will play 30 minutes, 1 hour, then come back the next day or after lunch or something. So then probably you forgot some information. And if there are too many characters, then you will get lost, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking then kind of like more about the play style in a game. We spent a lot of time talking about story and stuff, which is amazing because I love talking about the stories and the lore and the narrative of these games because huge lover of narrative in games. Player choice kind of seems to be quite central to how you are going to play this game, be it intentionally or not, from my perspective, because I was like, I'm going to be stealthy, and it all went very sideways very quickly. It's kind of, it seems to be quite integral as well because you don't have to stick to point A to point B because there are these really interesting secret routes that you can kind of take to try and navigate the game world in different ways. How did you kind of approach the designing and development of these pathways? And what were some of the kind of choices for this?
I think it's a really good question because it's a very big part of the game actually. I think like I don't know, I really wanted the player to be able to make some changes on how he can play, how he can be played the game. But we have only one character, so I thought, okay, what I can do is give different options of how you like play this character. So either more stealth or more action or more these sections like a hidden path that can be 2D platformer. And the thing I try to make is when I build the level, basically, well, you have point A, which is the start, and point B, the end, but you can go through different paths, and all of them are kind of like mixed, like that. So you have the level is like one big level, but each part in the level, maybe it's divided in 3 parts, and you can go one part stealth, then the other part more try to find another route which is hidden. And actually, there are quite a lot of them. Like some of them are really difficult to find. But they can make a good shortcut in the game. And I hope some speedrunners will find them. I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's how I thought about it. And then the difficult part is to try to make all aspects as difficult and fun to play. Like if you have one aspect which is too easy, then everyone will go for it, and it will be not fun. So that's why the stealth that you tried is not that easy. Even though if you manage the stealth, you can play the whole game without being touched or noticed, almost, I think, or at least I will try. But then the action is not killing. Like it's not in Commandos. I've told you about these games. If you are detected, basically you're dead, because there are so many enemies coming through at you, and they have bullets, so they can kill you in one go.
Very much attest to the fact that if you get someone buggered.
Yeah. So basically the action part in Aveliana is still playable, and it's more in a kind of Diablo-like, I would say, like like kind of hack and slash. But you can use some abilities to absorb damage. You can use some abilities to escape, and then when you progress throughout the game, you unlock new abilities. But also each ability will have different levels. And I made it in a similar way as it's made in Cuphead, where you have for each slot you have two choices.
Yeah.
So either you go the stealth or the action for this slot, and for the next slot, maybe stealth and hidden path or something like this. And the thing I've tried to make to force the players to play different styles along the game is that when you play one ability of the slot, you will get XP for the other slots, like the other ability on the same slot. So basically, if you go for stealth all the one level, you will get a lot of XP for the other ability, which is more action. So maybe next level, it's better to go for action to unlock more stuff for your stealth. That's how I try to play with both sides, both aspects.
That sounds really cool, actually, and to give players that kind of flexibility, because there is often a point, there are a lot of amazing games out there that kind of go, well, you can either go down the action route or the stealth route, but if you go down the stealth route, that's where you're going to throw your experience points, and you can't flip between. Like I remember playing Dishonored, for example, where I started off thinking
Skyrim or something like this.
Yeah, Skyrim as well. You just end up railroaded into your playstyle when there's not a lot of flexibility. So actually, it's a really nice system. Although I can imagine that must have been a real pain to try and balance and work out.
I don't know if it's totally balanced, but it's fine. It's still a solo game. So, but I try to make it fun at least, and not to make it fun. It must not be too easy. I mean, to my point of view, it must be difficult somehow, because I'm still from the old games, an old gaming guy. So it must have some difficulty, and you need to retry.
Yeah.
But it's fine. And for people who really don't like it, to lose or to try too many times, I made some systems where if you lose too much, then you get more HP for the current level. Like you get some bonus, and then if you pass to the next level, you lose the bonus. It's just for current level.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's very fun. And then I try to balance as much as possible to make everything playable.
Oh, sounds so good. I cannot wait to play the full version of this game when it comes out, because it did really excite me. And the fox is adorable. I mean, we're going to keep coming back to the fox because he is just adorable. But as well, in terms of just like the gameplay and everything, it felt really nice to play.
I did a lot of testing as well. The beta test is quite long already 6 months.
Yeah. The next thing then, in terms of gameplay, because we've touched on it a little bit. We've been kind of mentioning a bit of combat. We've been just discussing the kind of the level and the player choice and stuff. The other big thing, which I can imagine must have taken hours of your time to do, is the game boasts a huge host of enemies
Mm.
to ensure that the overall experience, it doesn't feel repetitive. It's not that kind of Call of Duty shooting the same men in suits all the time. You've got these hugely broad selection of monsters across the game's world. How did you manage to work? Because obviously you've been doing all of the artwork yourself as a solo dev. How did you manage both the artwork models and then the mechanics for such a huge range of enemies in the game?
For the artworks, I try to keep it as simple as possible. So you'll see like the enemies, they have shapes, like easy shapes, like squares or circle, spheres or something like this. Because for me, it's much easier to animate, because when you have to animate in all directions in 2.5D, it means 8 directions. It means quickly you go to 200 plus drawings for simple monster. It's way too much for a solo guy. So what I try to do is enemies that have the same, basically, the same aspects, whatever is the direction. So it makes them much easier for me to draw. And then I add some effects, like some moving parts that are in all directions. But this is easier. Just an eye, for instance, that I put on top or something like this. That's how I manage the art part. And for the gameplay, what I try to do is like each enemy is different in either the detection or the way it will attack you. So it can be a melee attack, it can be range attack, and like smashing on the ground is area of effect or these kind of things. And then it can have different kind of shapes for the detection. Because I didn't tell you, but my main job is actually physicist. And so I love shapes. I love cosine shapes. I love triangles and stuff like this. So I made some functions that detects on an area, which is whatever the shape I want. It will detect if you are inside or outside. So then I can use it very easily for different shapes, different enemies. I think it's fun because then you can combine like I don't know, like a kind of laser shape, like a very rectangular but very narrow, with a triangle, and then the laser can move, the triangle can be fixed, and then that makes some geometry that is evolving over time.
Yeah.
And I see it kind of like a puzzle, you know, like you can be on this piece of land because it's not visible, you're not visible. But then the next second you see that it's moving, so you have to react to this. So it's like a moving puzzle somehow.
Oh, that sounds so. It is really cool.
So how I build the enemies.
Yeah.
Try to give them a purpose.
But it's really quite cool actually, and what you've touched on there, I think, is really important. That actually, when you've got a huge host of enemies in the game, kind of relying on basic shapes, simple shapes, and going, right, this is my starting point, and then you're just adding a couple of bits to it to make it a bit more kind of interesting and different from kind of the ones that you've done before and stuff, to kind of keep it fresh, is really, really cool. And it's
makes
quite
also them easier to recognize by the player. Because if you make I mean, for me, like in the 2D game, if you make too detailed characters, it becomes very difficult sometimes to know which one it is and how it will attack you. So what I try to make is that if it's like a spherical area of effect, then the enemy will be spherical, something like this.
God, that's really cool. That is really awesome. Actually, it sounds very similar. To draw the Hades comparison again, it's like when you're playing Hades and you see those annoying little purple crystal bastards.
I didn't have the chance to play it so far, so I must play it. But I've seen some gameplays walk through, and it's so amazing.
It's really, really good. But actually, just that comment there about having kind of like a level of familiarity. So you see, I don't know, for example, the sphere type enemy, you're like, okay, it's a sphere type enemy, it's probably going to do something similar to this, because I've fought a sphere type enemy before. So the player's not immediately on the back foot because they're in a new encounter area, but actually they've got a level of familiarity, which is actually quite useful for players as well, which is quite nice.
Because the idea is this is like while you go through the game, at some points you will recognize them immediately, the enemies. So you know that this one you can dash in front and just pass by, and you can go much faster in the end. The beginning is a bit slower, but then I think players will go much faster.
Brilliant. Our next question then, because you are developing the game using Unity, which is, you know, very much the kind of, it's quite big within the indie sphere. It's kind of the go-to development engine for indie developers and stuff. As a solo, I'll put my teeth back in. As a solo developer, how have you managed developing the game in Unity from both a design and a programming perspective? Because obviously I've got some personal experience with Unity. I'm sure that there are going to be people watching this that have some experience with Unity. It can be really amazing at times. It can also feel like you're hitting your head against a brick wall some of the time. So how have you kind of managed that whole kind of development pipeline in Unity?
So for me, it was like I never did a game before, so it was my first game, and I don't have a background in game development. So I just looked at what could be the easy engine that is not too limiting. And I think Unity is really a good choice for this. Like, I found it very easy to use, actually. Like, I don't know, but the interface looks easy. And even the shader, for instance, I am very bad at making shaders, but the fact that you can use the shader graphs makes it so easy. Like, you can see immediately what you're doing. And you don't really have to be good at this thing anymore, or at least for basic stuff. So it's a very good choice. I think it's helping a lot. And I don't know. I feel like also that it's in C, so it's a language I knew before. So I think it's helping a lot. And I think I didn't find a very big limitation, but yeah, it's just like I learned recently how to try to optimize my game, because before it was not optimized very well. So this I found it more clumsy, like, you know, the profiler, this stuff. Like at the beginning, I was like, "What is this? I don't understand anything." So now I get it. I understand what is written on the different lines. I can get the information I need. But before I was like, "What is these blue and green lines? I don't understand anything." So yeah,
Optimization
it's much better. And also this thing, like I don't know if you know about it, probably, but the frame debugger.
Yes.
I find it so amazing that you can see basically how your frame is built.
Yes.
Like a real time. And it's so good because you know how long it will spend on each thing you are putting in the game. So you know what is costly or not. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's something I found actually as well when I've used Unity, is that little numerical value that you look at and you just time things. You're like, okay, this level is going to be absolutely bloody huge. Maybe we just scale down the level of detail and stuff, and we just reduce the field of view and and all the fun optimization things that come in when you're playing around with it and going like, oh god.
I can't imagine in 3D how it is. Maybe later I will try 3D stuff. But in 2D, it's fine. It's easier.
Oh, brilliant. We got two more topics I want to cover before we kind of wrap things up. And the first one of these, and I've mentioned it constantly throughout this entire interview, and we've only just got to the question now, which makes me feel like a bad interview, but I was saving one of the best things to last. Because the combat in this game, it feels so fluid, so nice. It's really responsive. You're Avaliana kind of like, you know, has a set of skills. I would assume you'll get more skills, as we've discussed. You'll get more skills as you move through the game. That you can use to help you both in and out of combat. Like you said, you know, your players are going to have the option level by level. Do you want to be? You've got these experience point banks. You can spend them on stealth. You can also spend them on combat if you want. There's not going to be like a locked limit on this kind of thing. How did you design and implement this incredible combat system, which it genuinely does feel really nice and really smooth? Like, I push button, and it's not just how it feels from a play perspective, it's how it looks on the screen as well. The particle effects and the animations are absolutely beautiful. How did you kind of design this and implement this into the kind of overall game?
Well, first, thank you so much, because I think you know it, but as a game developer, when people tell you all the time about art that is good, you're like, okay, thanks. But when it's about the gameplay, it's like, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Because it's really the core of a game. So, and people don't tell it very often. I mean, generally people, they don't see games as gameplay stuff. I don't know why, but when they test, they immediately see the graphics. So it's obvious they will give you feedback on the graphics first. And so I don't know. I think like if you look at the initial versions, it was so bad, the gameplay. The moving around, all the stuff was very bad. But I watched a lot of the videos of the guys who did Celeste.
Yeah.
You know, and they were speaking all about this, like you need to make the gameplay difficult or look difficult, feel easy. Like you must never frustrate, or as little as possible frustrate the player, and he must always feel like he has done something wrong, but he can do it better the next time. So that's what I try to do in my game, even if it's not a platformer. I try to make like if you start an attack, for instance, you have some delay where you can still rotate the attack, the orientation, this kind of stuff. I think it's important. The character is sliding a little bit when you attack, so you can still move to the enemy. So even if you start too early your attack, you still have possibility to hit the enemy because you can still move a little bit, but just a tiny bit. And the opposite also, if you are receiving a hit while you are attacking, then you can move back a little bit by sliding if you're moving. I think it was this kind of little details that were important. And also the camera, I try to make it not move too much, and I try to give a lot of feedback. Like when you get it, I put some red areas, like in the FPS shooters, some kind of stuff that shows you that you got hit.
Yeah.
And also on the enemies, I put some flashing, like stars that grows and shrinks, just to show that this one has been touched, this one not, and so you know which one you can target or not, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's very important.
Absolutely.
Not always easy, honestly. It was a difficult part to get something that feels good when you move around. Not too slidey, not too slow, not too fast. Yeah, it's a lot of adjustments.
We haven't played much of it here at Robot Republic, but I can attest to the small amount of time that we spent with the game, the movement stuff, especially the backstepping and the dashes. It feels really nice. Like
thanks.
it's that right amount to get you. Most of the time it was unsuccessful. It was very unsuccessful on my part because I would push the wrong way and I'd go into the little search cones on the enemies. But in terms of combat, it was like just that right amount of distance to get me the F out of there when it was going really wrong.
Yeah, because there's this thing, like it's never a linear force that I'm applying. Like even when you start, like when you move, for instance, I did a publication once on Reddit about this. Like when you move your character in one direction, okay, it goes like this. Then if you stop moving, it goes down a little bit, but not too fast. Then it can go up if you press again. And if you go opposite direction, it will keep the same velocity. But if you release and then go opposite direction, it will slow down, stop, and then restart.
Yeah.
And that's I think it's very good because you can feel the player and you can stop it when you want. And for what you say, to not fall into the cone of view, you need to be able to move a very little distance if you just press once. And you need to move quickly as well because you don't want to get stuck too long in the same position. Otherwise, it becomes like a Mario game, like where the character is actually quite slow. So I made a kind of ramp that is a quite complex equation in the end, but it's okay. It works, and I like it this way. Now I feel it's good and fun. And it works both with the controller and the keyboard. I think both are quite equivalent, even if I prefer the controller. I think it's always better.
I tried a bit on keyboard and mouse, and it felt really nice, but playing it on controller, the dashing on controller felt really good.
It's like flying. You can fly all the time.
It was so good. And the fact that you did your own physics equations to work out exactly how best this would work out, plotted them on graphs and everything, is just, that's blown my mind, actually. That is so cool.
Fun. It was very fun to do. Honestly,
God, yeah.
Because I'm a physicist also, so I enjoy the equations. But they are quite long. Some of them are quite long.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds so cool.
For the jump, for instance, like it's a silly equation. But it's fine, it works.
Oh, that sounds so cool. Like really awesome. Last thing I want to talk about before we move into our final couple of questions is the music for the game. The music is really nice. It fits the game's aesthetic and narrative beautifully. It is so well kind of like paired and stuff. When you were kind of like because I know we discussed the fact that you kind of were looking for a music director for the project. When you were thinking about music for the game, how important was it for you to kind of have a soundtrack that complemented the game's tone?
I think for me it was the main thing. Like, especially when I started to put music in the game, I really understood it was not the same game. Also for the sound effects, like any sound effect makes the game so much better.
Yeah.
But of course, if there are good qualities, it's even more important. And for the music, I mean, I didn't tell you the story, but I was really lucky because I was like not really starting to try to find someone for the music, but someone sent me a message on Reddit and told me, are you looking for like a music director or a designer? Because I'm in my master's degrees and I need to make some music for my end finals for a video game. I was like, wow, nice. And then that's how it started. Like she proposed to do it for free, like this. And then after some point, I told her, okay, I'm gonna pay you for this. So now we're going to do this, and she's doing more music for the game. But I was so lucky to find her because she did this first music you can hear in the game, the first one. And immediately I was like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted. Like, I wanted something. I just said something like, I want something a bit airy with real instruments. I don't want two fake instruments or two numerical instruments. And she did perfectly. I think it was amazing. Like, really the best music. Everything I wanted. So I put it in the game, and then the other tracks she did are also really, really good. I really love it.
Oh, that's brilliant. And actually,
I know it's not easy, but make music for a game.
Yeah,
it's so tricky.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've kind of, I was
it's
talking
not the
to
same thinking. Like I made her for some boss fights, and for like now she will be making the fights as well because she didn't make it. Someone else did it. But for the boss fights, for instance, in the I asked her, can you make a track that I can cut in 3 pieces, intro and then and it was like, it's not obvious, like, you have to get a middle part that you can repeat that doesn't feel too annoying after 2 minutes. So it's a real challenge, I think.
And
it sounds very good.
Finding those loop points as well within a piece of music, be it a piece of music or a song or any piece of soundtracking for a video game,
difficult.
is so, it needs to be like, you're talking tenths of a second between the transitions that you need to absolutely nail, otherwise it will all just kind of fall apart.
That's why I was telling her, like, oh, please, can you put me like a cymbal sound or something like in between the 2 sections, because with a loud sound maybe I can cut easier, but otherwise it's very, very tricky. And also you want something a bit unique in all the pieces of the music or part of the track. But if you make something too unique, that when you repeat it, it becomes obvious that it's a repetition. So it's not easy to make this kind of repeating tracks, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And a really important thing actually that's often overlooked, everyone kind of goes, oh my god, yeah, no, video game music sounds amazing, but actually there's a lot of technical stuff that goes on behind the scenes with game music that is
so many stuff.
Bloody tricky.
I couldn't have done it. Instead, all the sound stuff, all the sound part, I was like, no, I will not do it because I'm not expert in music or sound recording and all this stuff. And I understood that it's very important to have a good quality audio for a game. And it's the same for the sounds. Like, if you have too repetitive sounds, it becomes annoying so quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we've played the old games, and they had so low memory that they put so repetitive sounds. So after a while, it was a bit annoying.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'll ask 2 questions, and if anyone's watched these things before, Romain, if you've watched any of our other things, my last 2 questions are always the same to everyone, because what can I say? I'm basic at times. Second to last question. What have been during the kind of whole development of Avaliana, what have been some of the biggest challenges during its development?
There are quite a few. So I think the first one was to do the Kickstarter, because I did a Kickstarter quite early, and it was a lot of work. And then the other big point I think that I actually didn't succeed is to find an editor, publisher, because I think there are a few points in my way of doing, or the fact that I'm solo dev, but also working only on my free time. It's not my main job. That's kind of refreshing for the publishers, I think.
Yeah.
They were not very keen on publishing my game because of this. I think it's too risky for them.
Yeah.
And I understand. They didn't tell me this exactly, but I think
that's the vibe
that could be one point. And also another point is that I don't really need intake any money. I don't need money for the development.
Yeah.
Because I have a job aside, and so it's also not very attractive for publisher. But I think that the two big points, trying to find someone that will help you, either with the Kickstarter, that you have to ask money to random people you don't know, and I was successful, and I was really amazed that so many people gave money to this kind of project.
Yeah,
and it was a lot of work and a lot of stress because you see the numbers growing, but you're like, if I don't pass the cut, then I have zero. So it's a bit stressful.
Oh god, yeah, no, that could.
Yeah. And then the publisher part, it was a bit stressful. I mean, not stressful in the way that I don't really need it, but I want people to help me with the marketing.
Yeah.
And with sharing the game, reaching the streamers, reaching the people, the press, and all this stuff. I think you cannot do it if you are not already from the game development community, or if you don't have a background in a video game company or something like this. That will help you a lot because it's on your CV and you already know people. I don't know anyone, so it's a kind of a thing I need to work on, try to get closer to more people. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the big points, I think.
Yeah.
I like if more people can play the game, it would be nicer, not just for the money, but also for I would love to have a lot of people playing it. It would be
definitely
big success for me.
I mean, I know that kind of I genuinely love this game. I love the aesthetic. I love the small portion I got to play. It's such a good game. And yeah, if you're watching this video, do go and click on that link down in the comments, because that goes directly to the Steam page.
Wishlist the game as well.
And wishlist that bad boy, because it is a really good game. It's got an adorable fox, and everything else in the game is it's beautiful. The music is stunning. The animations and the combat are just fluidly brilliant. Yeah, the whole game. Just go and wishlist it, people. Go and wishlist it.
Doing my best for everything. But it's really nice, and also to have feedback like you and other people every day, because I publish every day on Twitter.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Having the feedback from anyone, it's wow. Every time I'm okay, I know why I do it. It's because people enjoy seeing it, and I'm creating something, so it's amazing.
Absolutely. My last question then, and I know this is probably the last sort of thing you want to focus on right now, because I know that you're very much in optimization mode to try and get the game ready for release. But what is next for Avaliana, and have you got any other future projects in mind, kind of moving forward, I suppose?
For Aveliana, I still don't have a release date, because as a solo dev, I feel a bit frightened to give a date.
Yep.
So I need to really polish it to finish everything. I'm really in the end part, I think maybe 10 last %, but it's the most difficult one. You really have to do everything correctly and not introduce new bugs and stuff like this.
Yep.
So before giving any date, I really want to be sure that it will be finished, or it's almost in a state where I can publish it right now. That's what I want before saying any date. So I'm trying to head for maybe next year, but I don't know, maybe before the mid of next year, but I don't know. And that's for Aveliana. So I hope then people will enjoy playing it, and maybe if there is a lot of people playing the game, I can try to do a Switch version or something like this.
Oh, that'd be
depending on what's the next console, but I guess it will still be Switch.
Probably, isn't it?
That would be awesome. I don't think they will make a new one next year. So that would be so awesome. Or I need to test it also on Steam Deck and all this stuff. I think it should be working. And that would be the next steps. And then I don't know for the future. I know that I still want to make games, even if I will still have, it will always be like a hobby or kind of a side stuff. It's not my main job, but I started and now I cannot stop. Like I really felt in love with the game dev stuff. I like everything of it. Like even the animations.
Yep.
I was starting. I was like, I'm so bad in animating. I cannot do this thing. But now I enjoy it. Okay, I should have started and done good drawings from the first time because now I have to redo them. It's even worse, but it's fine. And, yeah, maybe I don't know. I would like other kind of projects. Maybe something different, like I don't know, like a city builder or something like this would be so fun.
That'd be cool.
But I don't know. Like I will see. I have some ideas.
Absolutely. Romain, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show, honestly. I've loved talking to you about Aveliana and really excited for its potential release or hopeful release sometime in 2023. Last thing before we wrap things up, where can our lovely viewers find you on the internet?
So thank you so much for inviting me, and they can find me mostly on Twitter. So it's at the French dev with an underscore in the end, because otherwise it's not me. And well, I have everything like the Discord and the Reddit and stuff like this. But I think Twitter is the best because I post every day there. And then there is the Steam page, so you can wishlist, you can play the demo, and you can give me some feedback. And I'm also running right now the beta testing. So if people want to join the beta testing, it's free and you don't have to test a ton of things because I'm doing chunk by chunk. So you just test maybe 2 or 3 levels and you just give me your feelings and your like bugs you can find. And then that just takes half an hour of your time or something like this. So could be nice as well.
This is awesome. Yep, awesome. That sounds really cool. And Romain, like I said, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on, taking time out of your very busy schedule. And if you are watching this video and you liked it, like I said, go and check out Romain's Twitter page down in the description down below, along with a direct link to that Steam storefront page so you can download and play the demo now. You can wishlist this amazing game because it is genuinely amazing. Romain, thank you so much. To everyone watching, thank you as well. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, give us a little like, let us know what you think, what you're most excited about Avaliana in the comments below, and make sure you do go and wishlist it and subscribe to Robot Republic for more chatbots and all of our amazing other content. Romain, thank you. And we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.